Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee to review board rules to order. A physical quorum of the members is not present. However, pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, members are permitted to attend remotely. Either one member of the committee, the chief administrative officer, or our chief legal counsel are physically present at the regular meeting location. In-person attendance and public comments are allowed, subject to attendance limitations required to ensure the health and safety of those who attend. Pursuant to the Illinois Attorney General's guidance to public bodies on the Open Meetings Act during the COVID-19 pandemic dated July 2nd, 2020, county board members may participate without being physically present in compliance with the established provisions. So can we have a roll call, please?
Chaplin?
Here.
Desart?
Here.
Eckhoff?
Here.
Hart? Selman?
Here.
Day.
Here.
All right, welcome everyone. Do we have any public comment?
No.
All right, no public comment. Next up under Chairwoman's remarks, I just want to take a moment to thank staff, not just senior staff and Jason, who has put in a whole lot of work to getting us to this point, but all the department heads and everyone else who's weighed in through the last few months. I'm really proud of the point that we've gotten to. I think we've had really productive meetings. And so I'm really excited to see this next phase of our conversation. Next up is approval of minutes. So we need a motion to approve the ad hoc committee to review county board rules regular meeting minutes of February 16th, 2021.
So moved, Chaplin.
Second, Zay.
Great. Any questions, comments, corrections? All right, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chaplin?
Aye.
Desart?
You're on mute.
Sorry, aye.
Eckhoff?
Aye.
Selman?
Aye.
Day.
Aye.
Great, thank you, everyone. The motion passes. Next on our agenda is discussion. So we're going to start off with the county board meeting times. Jason, do you want to go through the memo you put together for us?
I would like to. So give me 1 second. Joe, why is it not letting me share the screen now? Give me just 1 second to have that pulled up.
No problem.
Do you have one of these?
While Jason's doing that, just by way of reminder, Member Hart had asked us to look into just sort of when does everyone else meet in the state to sort of size us up to see, are we doing what everyone else is doing? Are we outside the norm? So Jason put together this really thorough memo, so we wanted to share that with the committee.
Did you want me to just talk about it then, Chair?
Yeah, just kind of run it through a little bit.
Sure. So as Chair Selman indicated, Member Hart had indicated that he'd be interested to see what the other 101 counties do throughout the state. Upon conducting some research on it, broke it into 3 main sections: morning, evenings, and afternoons. A majority of the meetings did occur in the evenings, and evening was considered anything after 5 p.m. The next highest was mornings, which would be anything prior to 12. And then there was a few in the afternoon, which is the 12 to 5 area. Also, there was 5 counties that, believe it or not, I actually couldn't find when they meet, which kind of shocked me, but that's interesting. So there's that. And then the next is their exact start times. So for meetings that happen in the morning, the average or the main hot point was 9 a.m. There was 11 counties that did that. And then in the evening, there was 2 hot times. It was both 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. And then the appendix below is every single county. If you want to look, I won't go through all of them. But those are the 2 main things that I think Member Hart wanted to show was when other counties' meeting times were, if it was in the evening or the morning.
All right, great. Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions about this now? If not, we can discuss it more when we get to that section of the red line. But if anyone had any initial thoughts or questions, I wanted to make time for that now. All right, seeing none. So next up on our agenda are the county board rules, the red line document. I know some people had some technical difficulties last night, so I hope the PDF worked for everyone. And thanks, Jason, for sending that out after hours. I know you had probably rushed to get back to your computer there. So I think we're just gonna, like we went the first method of just going thoroughly through the entire document. I think this will probably go faster because we're mostly just making sure we captured consensus. This has been a project that myself and Jason and Nick and other members of senior staff have met pretty periodically to try to combine all our notes and make sure we captured everything. But if something isn't reflected, it's not a disagreement, it's just too many cooks in the kitchen trying to take notes. So if there's something that confused someone or was surprising, please feel free to point it out. So just starting here, oh yeah, member to start, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up something a constituent, Edgar Powell, had called me, and I just wanted to throw this out there, but he likes very much the non-gender labeling, but he suggested using board president or even board executive instead of chairman or chairwoman. Just throwing it out there to let you know what a constituent said to me.
Thank you, member to start. I had talked to member Powell earlier this week as well. And he was also very happy with the chair change. I had told him I wasn't positive if we picked that title or if the statute or something did. So definitely happy to look into that more because I know other counties use different terms, but I think there's some differences in the terms. So we had a good conversation about that, but I agree. Thank you so much for sharing that feedback.
Chair Solomon, I'm being advised that, yeah, that is statutorily, the way we have it.
Okay, so the improvement we could make here was to make it gender neutral, and I think we've done that throughout the document, but everyone's eyes, hopefully if you see one we missed, do let us know. So just as member to start pointed out, that's the one change you'll see just sort of in this first document and throughout is that we changed it from chairman or chairperson or whatever to just be chair. And then of course, anyone who's chairing a committee can choose how they wish to be addressed. All right, so we can keep going here through.
Chair Solomon, can I just make also one comment at the top?
Yes, please.
Please note, guys, as we're going through this, that the formatting, that's not perfect. That's because of the red line. So I do know there's some formatting issues. We'll fix that before a final copy. Secondary, the state's attorney's office is still reviewing it. On initial blush, they've indicated that there isn't anything too concerning that they thought, but they are looking through it one last time too. So just so you know, some of this language might need a little bit of changing if the state's attorney weighs in otherwise. But sorry, I just wanted to say those two at the top.
No, thank you so much. Those are good reminders. Okay, so in this first section on county board times, we've amended it to be anytime after 5 p.m., which we had discussed. If we choose to hold evening meetings, and the sort of consensus was phrasing it this way gives us the most amount of leverage. So if we want, every other meeting to be evenings, we want it to be once a quarter like we had discussed, the board would always have that power to make that decision when it sets its schedule. So are there any comments or questions or concerns about this? I see member to start, and then we'll go to member Zay.
Thank you. I just wanted to say for just the language of it, it should read, the county board may from time to time elect to convene for evening meetings on the days designated for either 4 regular meetings or for a regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. And then member Zay had his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why we have it after 5 p.m. I mean, just by stating the meeting, I mean, what are we going to do on committees that day? Does that mean finance is going to meet at 3 p.m.? I mean, does that not give us a lot of leverage on that point?
I think it's just to give us as much time as possible. In some earlier, when we were sort of spot checking to see when our peers meet in the evening, they all seem to start around 5:30 or so. We thought backing it up, because we could still schedule it at 7 if that was our desire, but it allows us to schedule it at as early as 5. So if we need, if we know it'll be kind of a quick meeting and we want staff to be able to get out of there a little earlier, it just gives us that flexibility.
Well, and as you say, peers, I mean, the collar counties all meet in the morning.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, basically, I mean, so peers, if we're talking about a county of 50,000 people, I don't think of them as my peer. I mean, I'm thinking of the collar counties meeting in the morning. I mean, what has staff said about, I mean, that's my concern. What are we going to do for evening meetings? How are we going to compensate these people? Or are we going to give them comp time? Are they going to have the next day off? I mean, what are we going to do? We can't have people working 19 hours. I mean, what's the plan there? You can't do one before the next.
Agreed. Is Nick in the room?
Yes.
Would you feel comfortable commenting on that, or are we still
Sure.
discussing it with staff? Okay.
Sure. So we, based upon the kind of the talk and discussion I had before, I know there was talk about having both committees and county board meetings and finance meetings at night. What would that be? I mean, uniformly across the different departments, the concept of the committee meetings at night would create a very, very large burden on staff, specifically the committee secretaries and doing that. The thought process is anytime on Tuesday would be fine for staff. Stretching it out, if you guys want to have longer meetings, that'd be fine. As far as the county board meetings and finance meetings, given Zoom now and what we've done, the thought process is that probably the most senior staff would be there, probably not all of the staff at the night meetings. And I don't think the intention, talking to Chair Selman, is to have it every single meeting. It would be just like a 2 or 3 or 4 a year type meeting for the county board and finance. But how it's worded right now, it gives the board ultimate flexibility for when you guys set your schedule. If you guys decide no night meetings, all night meetings somewhere in the middle, this gives you guys ultimate flexibility to decide when you set your schedule in November for the following year.
And thank you, Member Zay, for that question. It's a good reminder. We've tried to interact with staff as much as possible and get good feedback, but if there's anything anyone sees where you think, oh, a conversation I had with a staff member makes me think this might not be a good idea, absolutely share those. This is the time. Member Chaplin?
Thank you, Chair Salmon. So do we have to have any time in there? I mean, can we just leave it those first 2 sentences and leave out the last sentence? That way it gives us complete flexibility to have an evening meeting. If we want to have it at 5 or 7 or 8 or 9, do we have to have a time in there?
Maybe our state's attorney knows that answer.
Technically, no, but it defines when the evening begins, so to speak. You can't have an evening meeting before 5 o'clock. So either way, it would be fine.
Okay.
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 So are we okay leaving this section sort of the consent, or sorry, Member Zay?
Yeah, I mean, from our discussion, I mean, what are we looking for here? If we're only going to do it quarterly, which again, history proves, I mean, we used to have 4 meetings a year at night and for many years, and nobody attended. And then we went to 2 and nobody attended. And that's why a couple of years ago, we took them out, because people just weren't attending. I mean, why are we looking to change? I mean, is there a movement to have meetings at night? I mean, are we looking, I mean, I heard people, so people can attend meetings, or is it because, I mean, other board members had said so people can run for this office and weren't allowed to? If you're only doing it quarterly, I don't think that really changes it. I mean, I'd like to be a state legislator, but I don't want to drive down to Springfield and take that much time around. But I mean, what is the finding here? I mean, are we looking at bringing them back because there's a call for them, or, I mean, are we looking at changing it, so it's easier for people to run for this office?
Right, I would, Member Chaplin, I do see your hand. I'll respond first, but then I'll go to you. I see the consent, or at least the discussion for the reasons of this being twofold. One, I have had a lot of constituents say to me, oh, I've never been to a board meeting. They're in the middle of the day and I work, or that's when I gotta make sure I can get lunch ready for the kids, that sort of thing. So it is a barrier to the public. And while I certainly understand historically maybe attendance wasn't great, I think our electorate has become increasingly more involved and curious in their local elected officials in the years. So I think we would have some attendance. And the second issue is, I think, whether we decide to do it quarterly, or maybe we make the decision they're more efficient at night and there's a reason to do it in the evening, it would open it up to a lot more people being able to run. If you're a school teacher right now and you want to serve on this board, there's either leaves of absences or changes to your schedule, or a whole lot of things that lead a really big barrier. But a lot of people have a lot different availability in the evening. So I see those both as being potential benefits, but surely we could find ourselves in the case where no one attends and we only do the evenings for 1 year and we revert back to our schedule. But I think this gives us the flexibility to try. Member Chaplin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Summit. So I think what happens when we have sporadic evening meetings, I think people are used to our meetings being in the day, so they don't even look for them at night. So I think we have better chances of having attendance I think it's hard to have them quarterly because I think that people they think we're having them at night and they don't pay attention. So, because so what I'm trying to say is not being consistent, I think, is a problem of people not showing up in evenings. I don't know if anybody else would agree. I think it might just be how our schedule is. So, you know, either if we're going to have them, I think we have to promote them heavily, that we're having these meetings in the evening, you know, months ahead or whatever. Here's our night meetings if you want to attend. I think that would be a great way to do it. But I think it's going to take some effort to get people to attend those evening meetings. So like doing a really reaching out to people to let them know that we've added those to our schedule, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this will all be something we discuss when we do the actual schedule this fall. This rules change us a lot. So that's the most flexibility. So if we want to take advantage of that option, we have it. All right, so is there consensus on this edit? If so, we'll keep it in the first read version. Okay, so let's go to our next edits, please. And there we're just changing chair. There was some language cleanup in chair. This is all just changing chairman to chair. If we can go back, yep, right here. The preparation and presentation of the budget. Our discussions and discussing with staff, we move this back to match more what we consistently do. Member Desart?
Thank you, Chair Selman. I actually wanted to go back to section 2, letter C. I thought we had a discussion here, and maybe we had the discussion and just didn't get a consensus. You can correct me, but under the chair traveling to Springfield or Washington, D.C., I thought we talked about if using taxpayer dollars to travel to D.C. or Springfield, they should be accountable to the elected body and make a report, either verbal or in writing, about their business. I thought we did talk about that. So instead of saying, as necessary, shall from time to time provide the board with reports on such activity, we should just delete from time to time. And I mean, if you're using taxpayer dollars to travel, you should be accountable.
Right. I think that's a good change. Do others have concurring or opposing positions on that?
I think it's nice that they should put a report in.
Yeah.
Even if they don't give it to, present at the board, send it an email or something.
Okay.
So delete from time to time.
Okay. I think that's a good change. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Desart. So we'll make that edit in C there, Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So going back down through, I think these are mostly just a bunch of chair changes. So here in preparation and presentation of the annual budget, this is the one where we are changing it to align it with what we actually do in practice. And then we are still meeting the legal timeline. So does anyone have any questions or concerns about that? Okay, seeing none. Some chair changes, he, she, his, hers. All right.
I had,
Yeah, Member Desart.
as we're going through, I had a thought about the appointments. I know we discussed the appointments to include an ethics form along with the applications to report campaign contributions or whatnot. Was there no consensus on that, to include an ethics form with our appointments?
Yeah, Jason, do you remember where that conversation ended up? I know we had talked about discussing it with the state's attorney.
We did also, but there wasn't consensus. So a lot of these
Oh, okay.
edits are the ones that we truly had consensus. I
Okay.
don't remember it being a consensus thing, but Nick Alfonso did mention to us in that meeting about, there's a First Amendment after a certain point. I don't remember exactly what that figure was you thought, but I know you had something on that.
Yeah, I believe I did send an email to the board explaining those positions. I'm not sure if,
I think you did.
please let me know if you did not receive that, but as to your question, Madam Chair, there was no consensus on this issue to my recollection. There was no one way or the other.
Is there, if we were to come to consensus to include it, is there something that we need to keep in mind, a dollar amount or a concern that you have before we continue that conversation then?
There are concerns as to whether or not requiring a disclosure and then refusing an appointment based on the disclosure would be a First Amendment violation. So not necessarily a problem with requiring the disclosure, but then acting on the basis of the disclosure could raise issues.
Okay. And then I'm just checking. The memo is the one you sent on the 25th of January. You sort of had like question and answers, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I had the one in my email. Okay, so I think we should discuss the ethics form being added to the appointments.
Yeah.
Do others have other input they want to add? Member Chaplin?
Yeah, I don't know if, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. So I would agree. I think we should ask for it. And if they don't fill it out, they don't fill it out. But I think if we ask for it, I think that would, I think we're not going to terminate, we're not going to not appoint them if they don't fill out the vendor ethics form. But I think it would be nice to have it in there and, just ask them, it's voluntary to fill this out if you so choose.
And we're just looking for donations, right? Not the lobbying section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the form's there. I mean, if they fill it out, they just put NA for lobbyists, I don't think we need a separate form for appointments.
You would just want to use the same sort of ethics form?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If I may?
Yep.
In order to ask a prospective appointee for that information, you don't necessarily have to memorialize the ability to do so in the rules. That can just be something the board does as part of its process for requesting
procure.
appointees.
Okay.
So you don't have to memorialize it in the rules to be able to do that.
Okay. Yeah, members A?
Yeah, just being devil's advocate, you want this ethics disclosure. The person discloses they did give a donation to the chairman. What are you seeking? What remedy are you seeking? Are you then going to disqualify them from serving in that position?
No, we were just told we can't. No, I think
Well,
it's
that's
just,
why I'm saying, why would we ask for it if we can't? I mean, there's
Because
a
I think
reason to
it's-
ask for it.
I think it's transparent and people can see that, we're giving appointments to people that donate to board members. I think it's important information that people know. And that's all. I think it goes in our transparency and accountability that part of the ACT initiative.
So remember, just start based on what State's Attorney Alfonso said, that we could today, if we wanted to start requiring it, we could do so even if it's not the rules. Would you be comfortable with sort of just implementing that practice, or do you think it's important that it's in the rules?
No, I thank you for asking. I agree that it does not need to be memorialized, but I'd like to see it implemented for sure.
Okay. I don't know exactly how to, Nick Kottmeyer, can you ponder how we follow up on that, and we'll check base later this week?
I will absolutely do that. I'll include discussions with the state's attorney.
Perfect.
I think we can and the chairman to figure out how to implement this.
Okay, and let's include Member Dessart if she has time to as well. I think that would be,
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
thanks. Okay, so we're okay with this appointment section then as it stands based on that conversation. Perfect, thank you. All right, voting and tie, these are just chair updates. Same here, some chair updates. The execution of board actions and the fiscal condition, that's just, again, updating it with what we do in practice, that if for some reason the chairman was unavailable, it would flow. Some grammar and chair edits here. Chair edits. Yep, Member Dessart?
Thank you. I have a comment about why.
Okay.
Employee performance review. I thought we discussed the committee chairperson being in on these performance and merit reviews. Example, my fellow member Zay has been on the stormwater committee for 50 years, and who knows, the senior staff better than him, So I thought we discussed the chairperson of that committee being in on those reviews.
You're right. I think where we had landed was that was something we were going to try to add via practice as not part of rules, but we can reopen that discussion if that wasn't consensus. That's completely okay.
How does everybody feel
And
about
for
that?
the record, I'm only 53, so it's only been 21 years.
Your baby. Yeah, how does everybody else feel about that?
Well, we've not, I mean, I don't think we've ever seen these. I have never seen an employee review. So is it something we keep in the rule? I mean, I don't know. Are we going to do it? Are we going to actually get copy? I mean, you know, if the chairs of the committees do it, I think that's nice, and they could put it out to the rest of the board members. But again, it's something that's in the rules that we really haven't been, you know, doing.
So for staff, I know we had discussed, you know, there's the privacy of the actual department heads. We want to make sure this stuff's not any more public than it needs to be, because we're the people who sign up for things to be far too open. But was there any concern about chairs weighing in? And if so, is that something we should be doing by practice so we could discuss with the chairman, or that it would need to be in the rules? If there's staff in the room who could answer. Yeah, sorry, I can't tell whose hand is up, but please go ahead.
Yes, Alfonso, what you guys are asking for is already part of this rule. Second sentence is the chairman shall send completed reviews to the chair of each staff member's parent committee for comment. So the chair of the committees are already receiving the reviews and having the opportunity to comment. Are you asking for something in addition?
I think we're saying that we're not receiving them. I think
We don't
that's,
get
I think it's part, maybe that just, so it sounds like we don't need to change the rules. We just maybe need to clarify that process. So Nick Hotmeyer,
yeah.
sorry, remember to start.
Or enforce the rules, yeah.
Yeah. So Nick, can you also add this to the list of things for us to discuss later in the week with the chairman? Okay.
So just a couple items on this one. I mean, everybody should realize that reviews happen when there's, you know, they haven't happened for a while, to be honest with you, because hasn't been a merit component for a very long time. So it may very well have been 2-3 years since some people had a review and going through that, but it has always been, I know that the chairman, the chairman's prerogative since especially department heads serve the county board and the chairman does the reviews. And I do think that the chairman being in on those reviews and weighing, you know, any input from the committee chairs during that review is definitely worthwhile. So, but I do think that having one point of contact between the department head and the chairman for that review, I think is an important component of it. But we can definitely have more discussion on this. But like the state attorney said, I think it is part of this, but I think that maybe this is a component that hasn't, because we haven't done year-over-year reviews, it's something that we need to enforce to make sure the committee chairs are a component of that review.
Okay. Just remember to start. Does that help clarify?
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so moving on from Y. All right, yep, we've got more just chair to vice chair. And then D is where I think we'll have some good discussion. We sort of.
Chair Solomon,
Sorry?
could I leave that off and just explain
Yes.
how I have it set up?
Absolutely.
So upon Chair Solomon and I having a discussion about this, there was kind of 3 ideas sent by the committee here, and she wanted me to try to showcase all 3 if possible. The first one is making it where the chair pro tem is selected at the beginning of the cycle with all the other chair people or chair committee assignments. The second one is following the succession plan, that a resolution that was, I think, implemented in 2004. I could be wrong on the date of that. And then the third option was actually making no change at all. So those are the 3. I just wanted to set up that conversation why you'll see these different edits.
Great, thanks. Yeah, this was one where we realized we probably didn't have a consensus. We just sort of had 3 ideas. So yeah, remember to start us off, please.
And even before that, when we're talking about the vice chair, we did discuss the vice chair, that the vice chair should be a majority member of the board. Did we not get a consensus on that? Because
Not that I remember.
Yeah, I don't think we had a consensus because it requires a majority vote for them to be elected. Just the way any vote would go, but we could discuss if that needs to be clearer, surely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember all of our discussions and make sure that what we've discussed is in this document, so.
Yeah, no,
Why
absolutely.
that up?
There's no way in reading these rules, Nick, Alfonso, that a minority of the board could pick a vice chair, right?
No, it would have to specifically state minority vote is sufficient for that to be possible.
Okay, so even if there was some, let's say we had some terrible flooding and we barely scraped by with quorum for that meeting, and for some reason remote didn't work because no one had power, and the quorum passed it, but the quorum didn't actually represent a majority of the board, is that a problem?
So technically, in that situation, it is hypothetically possible for less than a majority of the board to elect a vice, because if a quorum is present and a majority of the quorum votes, that technically is a valid vote.
Okay, so it would be like worst case scenario would be that it would be on an agenda at a time when board members physically couldn't participate, and then there could be shenanigans. But based on the way this is written, just in a normal meeting, it would require the majority of the board like any other vote.
And,
Okay,
and
okay.
yeah. And I thought we had talked about putting the vice chair and the pro tem has the senior most members of the board. And then we talked about the senior most member, if there was somebody that started at the same time, being the one with the most votes like they do in Congress. So I don't know if that, because, we had talked about how, the last 2 times with the selection of vice chair, we basically had the chairman saying, trying to put certain members in that didn't necessarily work out, but, I don't know that that's for the chairman. We wouldn't want any chairman to do that. So, I don't know if that was something we wanted to revert it back to how it was previously. I don't have a problem with these, how they are right now. But if we wanted to make both those positions not maybe so political and just have the 2 most senior members, 1 and 2 has each of those spots, going forward in 2022, not right now, but going forward, that might be, I don't know if that's how I know it was for the vice chair previously, before 2011. So I don't know, but like I said, I could leave it like this, or I could change it either way.
The one complication I see in the seniority thing was if we did that this year, the vice chair and the chairman of the board would be of the minority party.
Right.
But the one reason the seniority thing kind of comes into play when we were talking about the succession plan, because the thought is generally the chair of finance is someone like yourself, for example, who has a lot of tenure on the board,
Right.
who's been very involved, who knows the operation. So if a bus hit the first 2 people in line, you could have no problem carrying it. And then JPS, that's the second biggest committee, so they work with the most members and with some of the largest budget lines. But yeah, I'm open to more discussions about the seniority thing, surely.
But I'm okay with the way it's written, but I just thought that was something that we had discussed as well. But this is for the vice chair, that's fine. And for the pro tem, maybe just do it the same as the vice chair then, I think that item is that first red line. Elect with the body and nominate from the membership at the first regular scheduled meeting of the county board.
So
Keep those 2 in sync then. I think we do, they should both be the same to make it easier,
Yeah. So that would be the change from like the way it is now. It would just be,
right.
When we vote for our committees and the vice chair and the whole slate, we put someone as that third person to just make sure we have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally fine with that. Does anyone have any other? I can't remember, and Jason, you'll have to remind me. I know there was some concern about just following the succession plan. And I can't remember if it was logistics or if we worked through it.
I think the comment that was brought up was ASA Alfonso did bring up a good point when we were looking through this. He said the only issue with selecting a chair pro tem right off the bat is the point of a chair pro tem is in the event there's an absence of the chair and the vice chair, you need to be able to have a quick moment to pick your chair at that meeting. So that's how the original language was here, was to just allow it at that vacancy. You pick right then and there, and the majority picks. So that was to, I think I've made your point, right? Is that right, Nick?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that was the only thing he saw concerning was that, this does limit the board a little bit, whereas if there's a vacancy, boom, you just fill it right then and there.
And that's how I said I thought it should be too.
The way it currently is, right, Member Arco?
Yeah, just who's ever at the meeting that day. I mean, to be honest with you, in 18 years, I've never seen anybody other than the chairman or the vice chair run a meeting.
Surely, yeah, I think I would
Yeah.
absolutely,
Some committee meetings where the chair and vice chair wouldn't show up, but then we always just said, well, who's ever senior on the committee, senior and seniority, run that one meeting. That's happened rarely, but if you want to elect somebody, you can do it that way.
yeah, I agree that I don't think it's ever happened. And I think the only reason I gave it any thought this year was simply because we were in the middle of COVID. And I know many of the board members have either had it or had it in their households. And I thought, well, if there's ever a year to plan for the worst case, boy, aren't we in it. But there's something to be said for there's case studies of or examples of this working and not being an issue. Members, do you have it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my question's on long-term absence. I mean, how long are we talking? I mean, we talking about majority party and all that. If we have, as we do now, a Republican chairman and a Democratic majority on the board, I mean, doesn't that bring some kind of issue if we go over a certain amount of days that if the chairman were to resign or something would happen with illness, a Republican would have to be selected and vice versa. If a Democrat was there and it was a Republican controlled board, a Democrat would have to be, selected. Is there any legal problems here for the short term? I mean, how long are we talking long term? I mean, is there no long term? I mean, if it's 90 days, 60 days, or 120 days, I mean, I think, do we run into any legal problems at that point until that board member retires or passes away or something like that?
Remember to start before they answer, yeah.
Oh, thank you. The document itself says that long-term is anything more than 30 days. That's how it's described in the document right now.
And you're trying to see how long
Right,
after
not to
30 days
exceed how
before
many-
we have a
yeah.
problem.
Right.
Does our state's attorney, do you happen to know that?
So if I have the question correctly, is should there be an outside date for which the long-term absence becomes, in essence, a vacancy of the chair seat? Is that what you're asking here?
Yeah, I think so. If, God forbid, the person in the chair has a medical emergency and they're going to be, recovering for a year, but we're in the scenario we have now where the vice chair is of the majority party, but that's the different party than the chairman that the voters elected. Is there a point at which we have to reappoint or something? If this happened year one because it's a 4-year term for the chairman.
Okay, so that may be governed by elections code as well as the resignation sections of these rules. There are portions of the elections code which speak of, a member or chairperson's dereliction of their duties to the board as being grounds for, creating a vacancy in that seat. There are also, there's nothing barring the board from creating an additional rule here saying that, extended absence exceeding this amount of days constitutes, implied intent to vacate the seat. There's nothing legally wrong with including a term like that.
Okay, further discussion. So member to start.
Then if that language will make members A feel more comfortable, it's my opinion, we should add that language into this section. Would that help members A?
Yeah, just a question. I mean, when you start talking about majority, I just wondered what would happen if, somebody, had a serious illness and was gone 90, 120 days. What do we do at that point? I mean.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point.
Chairwoman, so I think that we should have maybe Jason or actually the state's attorney write up some language that we can review for this section.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And then consulting, obviously, what the election code says, maybe we can just sort of get the context of what would happen today if that happened, and then what some language is to clarify what the upper limit would be and how we would do that.
And then,
Okay. Yeah, Member Chaplin.
yeah,
hold on. Can you guys, I can't tell if I'm muted or not.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, so thank you. So, so if there was a resignation of the chair and we had a vice chair that was a Democrat, according to, and it was past the time of a special election, let's say, right? Would the vice chair continue to serve in that position until the end of that term, or would we would appoint, there would be an appointment from somebody else to serve as chair? That's how right, that would be correct. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, is if the chair were to resign, the party of that chair appoints. The replacement is like any other seat, if any of us did.
Even if it's past that time, even if there's like 2 or 3 months left?
I think so, because I think we've done that for board members.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Then, yep, great.
Member Sart, did you have another question?
No, I do not. I would
Okay.
just like to ask our state's attorney to come up with some language for us to look at to add that to this section.
I think that's a great idea.
Understood.
Thank you. All right, so back to pro tem. Is the consensus, I think, is leaning towards the first option. And then the question is, do we want to elect that person at the first meeting, or do we want to allow ourselves the flexibility of electing them just if the situation arises? Yeah, Member Desart.
I would go with when the situation arises, because what if, say, several board members were in Washington, D.C. for a NACO concert, and the chairman, vice chair, and the pro tem all had their plane delayed, you know? We would have to elect the pro tem from the floor. So that's the way I would go.
Okay. So I think, is everyone a pretty good consensus? We'll pretty much leave that as is then? No objections then? Great.
Chair Selman, can I add
Yes.
one thing? That depending on the outcome of which direction you go, we may have to rescind a 2003 succession resolution that is currently in place right now among the board. So depending on which way we go, that might have to be a component of this action.
Okay, so if we went with section A, we would have to, or like option A, this
That would-
first paragraph, we'd have to repeal the old ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. And have we ever used that ordinance?
We have not used that ordinance. I mean, we use it because, like we said, it's always been the chairman and vice chairman, and an ordinance says after the vice chairman, then the chair of finance, then the chair of JPS. We've never gotten to the finance level. It's always been the vice chair level.
Okay, and you guys that doesn't make you feel like there could be a scenario in which you wouldn't be able to get something done in an emergency? You feel confident you'd be able to get a hold of either the chair or the vice chair?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not that far. You could find us, you know where we live, I guess. So, okay, so do we have consensus then on keeping pretty much this section as was? All right, great. Let's move along then. Thank you for the good discussion. I think that's really fruitful. All right, committee means just some cleanup here, chair language. And then the section 5, I know Member Eckhoff, you had sent some language, and I think our state's attorney helped massage it a little bit. All right, let's just review this language and see if anyone has any comments here under part 5. Member Eckhoff, do you want to start by letting us know if it matches what you had been suggesting?
Well, what I wrote up, I had actually brought up at a meeting regarding old and new business. I mean, we can discuss it wherever we want. I just thought that it's improper for a county board chairperson or county board member to start, you know, politicizing their position on the board when they're on the board floor by talking about, you know, party and or elections, or what another candidate's doing or not doing, or what another party's doing or not doing to them. I just didn't think there's any place for that. That doesn't happen too often. I just thought we should make it part of our rules. Just like it's part of the rules, I think, for county employees. They're not supposed to campaign on the time that they're working for the county. So I don't, and the debate can be had, you know, whether or not we're servants of the county 24/7, 365, but I think we can all agree that we're definitely putting in county time when we're on the county board floor, and that's why I wrote the restriction.
So it's my understanding that the ethics ordinance covers that, and then if we did those things, we could have ethics complaints against us. Because
I talked to the ethics officer, and he does not think it covers these things for us.
so he thinks the ethics ordinance isn't strong enough that it needs to be in the rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would go ahead and, the person I talked to is Dan Hanlon.
Uh-huh.
So give him a shout, but that's pretty much what I was told. That
Okay. So I sort of see this as a different issue than the section of the rules we're in. I think the section of the rules we're in is making sure I'm not saying, I'm Ashley Selman, I represent the entire county board's opinion and I want this. It's, no, there needs to be votes and consensus to make sure that's the
why I
case.
said I brought it up under the sections old business and new business.
Okay, all right, sorry, I misunderstood then. I will follow up with ethics to review that issue and we'll bring it back to our next meeting.
He doesn't know it. Just tell him that after my conversation with him, I took what's in the ethics ordinance and tried to incorporate it in our rules. That if that doesn't jog his memory, then I'll call him.
Okay, sounds good. So getting to section 5 here about the lobbying, do we feel that this is sufficient?
Let me catch up. Where are we? We've been rolling through this very quickly. Okay, so we're on page 8.
Uh-huh. Starts just at the bottom of it there.
Yeah. I have that note somewhere else. So let me see where.
I believe this exact language kind of shows up twice. I think it's also under standing committees.
All right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Legislative, I'm sorry, yes, legislative.
Okay, because I did make a note. I'm sorry. You know what? If I can't find it right away, I'll bring it up then.
Okay.
Okay. Here's what I had to say. It's on page 41 where I had my note. I know we discussed this the last time, but any board member should be able to, no, that's not it. Never mind. I'll bring it up when I see it on my thing. I'm sorry. We got this at 6:30. We got this at 6:30
No problem.
so we had so many committee mornings this meeting, so I just raced through it over the lunchtime. So
No problem at all. Members A, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I know it was mentioned on the board floor a couple times, when we don't have consensus on an issue on the board, and it was, brought up that, board members are free to write letters to, say, the governor or a United States senator or congressman. Are we okay to do that? Does this say that we can? If we have 6 board members that feel strongly on an issue, we can write it on county letterhead that says, we don't agree with this, and we can send that letter off, or is that somehow considered, against the rules?
Does the state's attorney have an opinion on that?
Well, based on the plain verbiage of this rule, that may be violative of the rule to do that. Yes, that would violate the rule technically. So, if that is a concern, you may want to potentially rethink how this is written.
So if it was so if it wasn't on county letterhead, would it meet the last sentence there and then it would be okay?
It really depends on, how we're going to interpret a county board member as a board member lobbying. So, it might not even have to be on county letterhead. If it's the board member saying, I am a board member of the county of DuPage, we're in favor of this, then that in of itself is violative of the rule if there's not a majority allowing this to happen.
I feel like that would be, make it impossible for us to do our jobs. So I think
that's
the language
the
needs to be
issue.
edited. Yeah.
If we want to put a slip in on a bill, I mean, I'm going to put Jim Zay and it's going to say employer. I'm going to probably put DuPage County, right? I mean, at that point, I mean, they're going to put 2 and 2 together. I don't know.
And when I fill out slips, when I was working full time, I would put my previous employer. I don't know how, Member Chaplin, do you have a? Oh, you're on mute, Member Chaplin.
Okay, so I was under the impression that we could not lobby as a board member. So when I fill out witness slips right now, I put Liz Chaplin, employer, self, and there's another question, I put self. I don't put myself down as a county board member, especially if it's something that the county has taken an opposite position on. So, and that's since I've been on the board, I've always understood that I could not, especially because I was always in the minority, I could not do anything in my official capacity on bills that I disagreed with. I always just used my own name, Elizabeth Chaplin, you know, like resident at 5623 Pershing Avenue. But so that's my understanding of this. I don't think you can fill out a witness slip for something, let's say the board opposes the animal legislation that's out there right now, and you support it. I think if you filled out a witness slip that said Liz Chaplin County Board Member, I'd be in violation of our rules. Because I'm advocating as a board member against something that the board, the opposite of what the board said. So that's how I'm understanding this. And I might just be being extra cautious, but that's how I've always interpreted this.
I think the purpose of the rule is that so a county board member doesn't represent him or herself as representing the county board, but I think you can state your opinion as a county board member. And I'll give you an example that if you read the news clips that we got last night, there were 11 congressmen that signed a letter to Governor Pritzker saying they didn't like the way the vaccine was being distributed. They did that as congressmen, but they didn't say they were representing Congress. And that's the difference. So they sent the letter out, they signed it, they're acting in their capacity as congressmen, but they're not representing Congress.
I'd like to get some clarification. I don't know if we need somebody to weigh in on this. Maybe it's ethics, I don't know, but I think we need clarification.
I can definitely tell you my constituents want me, when they ask me a question, and I'm gonna give them my answer, whether or not it's consistent with the majority of the board, but they're going to get my answer as a county board member.
Well, your answer is different than actually lobbying. Talking to your constituents is different than lobbying for a bill. Those are two different items we're talking about. Of course, when my constituents ask me a question, I answer them honestly at how I feel. But going out to lobbying and answering questions are two completely different things. Of course, we go to meetings as county board members and talk with people, but you know, this is specifically lobbying we're talking about here. And I think that you're getting into a very, you know, a very contentious area, right? So I think we need clarification on this rule.
Hi, this is Cheryl. Can I add something? Member Chaplin's correct. I mean, there's only one person who's authorized to file witness slips for DuPage County, and that's Chip Humes.
Yeah.
And he gets direction from Chairman, Chair Desart, myself, to do so. Member Chaplin's correct. For many years, for example, she would slip the clean energy bill, but she put Elizabeth Chaplin's self, right? She did not put DuPage County board member, and that is the difference. We have to be able to control when you're slipping bills or officially lobbying, what is the official position of DuPage? And if individual board members, they have a right to go down and lobby on what they want to, as long as they put self or citizen. They don't put their title. That's how we've done it in the past. I'm not sure if this verbiage is what you're looking for, but you're right. That's been our practice.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. Member Desart.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, this is a tricky paragraph that I brought up last time as well. And I said, you know, I want to say last year, but last year was COVID year, so probably 2019. Animal Services Chairman Krajewski and I went and sat in Representative Stephanie Kifowitz's office a couple of times, and met a couple of times with Senator Holmes to talk about animal services issues related to the county. Did we have express consent from the county board chairman? We did not. So were we breaking the rules? But we were speaking on behalf of the county for county initiatives. I don't know. This is tricky, and I'd like the state's attorney to look at it a little bit closer.
And I think, remember to start, you're right. In that point, we've had on the past 3 or 4 years on the state legislative agenda that's been approved by the board, animal services, and specifically, you know, bills relating to puppy mills and the harm of animals. So you were really covered, I think, because I think Chip Humes was with you a couple of times.
yes, he
also. And it
Yeah.
was also something that's been in our program consistently. And it's a function of county government as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I think the consensus is we have no consensus on this language yet, because we want to go back to Don and make sure we understand. So when you could use your title, I guess, and when not. I think that's really what we're trying to get down to, without making it so that none of us can weigh into our state representatives, because we're all voters as well and are represented, and our voices should be heard just the same.
Chair
Yeah.
Chair Solomon, before Assistant State's Attorney Alfonso and I get together and come up with some verbiage, what would be the census of the committee then? Is that we want it to say more along the lines of in your capacity as an individual, or I'm sorry, in a capacity as a board member, you're allowed to say something, or what's the consensus for us to start writing some language on that at least?
So I think the consensus is you can represent yourself as a commissioner of this board with an opinion, but you cannot represent yourself as the voice of this county board. And does that make sense? So you can, as a board member, an elected official that your voters have chosen for you to go use your voice to represent them, of course you should be using that voice. But if I were to say, and the whole county board agrees with me, that's a problem unless we literally have that on paper.
So I want to clarify, it kind of, that's confusing. I'm thinking
Okay.
from a state legislator standpoint of you're getting one comment of here's the official stance to DuPage, but then you're hearing from the elected, well, here's my, so you're getting, and I think Cheryl made a great point in our very first legislative meeting about, the only way the voice sticks is if it's a consensus or we're speaking as one voice. Otherwise, when it's divvied up like that, legislators sometimes look and say, oh, well, you guys can't even come together on it. So why should I have an opinion on it? So I think that might actually limit or hurt what we're trying to do for
Okay.
you guys as board members. But I think that's just staff's
If you
perspective.
use your title, they're gonna think it's an official position.
Exactly.
Right, so
Yeah,
I
you
guess
can
that's, right, the thing I guess I was trying to get at was like this specific meeting that Member Desart and Member Krajewski were having, that the meeting was taken because they're county officials, right? But they weren't going there saying the entire, well, I guess they were in that case because we did have consensus. But like you wouldn't have gone and taken a meeting on something and, worked in that way if it was just a personal issue for you, right? If it was something you just personally believed, it would have been a different, it'd be, I'm Dawn, I'm your constituent. I would like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z, not me and my colleague want to talk to you about this county need that you've been told about. We just want to reinforce.
Right.
Member Chaplin?
Yeah,
No, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay, thanks so much. So thank you, Chair Salmon. So, it's kind of a confusing rule, but I think it has served its purpose well in the past. And like Cheryl said, even though, I filled out many witness slips opposite of what the board had voted on, but I used it as myself. But I think we do need that board. I think it would harm us to have one board member going out saying in their official capacity to Springfield one thing when the majority of the board supported another thing. So I think the way it's worded, I think it's worked in the past. And I kind of felt the same way first, like, oh, you're taking away my right as an elected official. But I think in the long run, we have to be a unified front, like Jason mentioned. And we can do it as individuals. And I think when my constituents see me coming on board as an individual, they appreciate that. So, but I think if we change this up too much or loosened it, I think it could be mayhem. And I think this is I think this leaving it just how it's written right here. I think it serves the purpose. I don't know if others agree.
How the edit is written or how the
Yes,
original?
how the edit is written, yeah.
Okay. Do you, sorry, so Jason, go ahead and comment, and then members A, I see you.
I just added in, sorry, I just added in language that Assistant State's Attorney Alfonso said might clarify this a little bit. So right after where it says state or federal government, add in the name of the county or the board without the consent majority of the county board or the county board chair. I think that kind of takes a little bit of that first language prohibiting that individual, but while still giving your personal capacity.
Okay. So members A, circling back to you, A, I saw you had like a question, so obviously go with that, but does that edit help address your original question where if you wanted to write a letter expressing an opinion different from the consensus, do you feel like this gives you the opportunity to do that?
Well, I mean, it's just, again, one of you not a board member at that point. You've been elected, and I know Member Chaplin said they sent letters in the past. I mean, how have you done in the past? I mean, have you done it on county letterhead? Do you put your signature with county board member? I mean,
No, I've never done it. I don't even have county letterhead. I've never done anything in my official capacity opposite of what the board has taken. So, because I think I even talked with Cheryl about this before I've done some things. But anytime like I said, if I've written a letter, which I haven't really written any letters, but anytime I signed a witness slip, I always signed it as myself if it was in opposition of what the board stance was. And, you know, like I said, I think as Cheryl mentioned, it would send a mixed signal if the majority does one thing one way, and then we have other members going down there saying, no, but I don't like this, I don't support it. But as a whole board, the majority, you know, felt this way and wanted to do something this way. So I have, you know, and the one letter that the ladies wrote last year, the board had not even, it wasn't even board business. It was about reproductive rights, which has nothing to do with the county board. So, but something that we had never even talked about or discussed. But like I said, I think if you have an opposite view of the majority of the board, like I've always done in years past, I've just filled out a witness slip as myself to not cause any to not cause confusion down in Springfield, because I think, as Cheryl and Jason both mentioned, it could cause a lot of problems. So I think that this is a good rule. It was very similar to what we had before, just the language flipped up a little bit.
Member Desart?
Thank you. Just trying to get consensus. I really think that addition of in the name of the county or the board is really helpful. I'm comfortable with that.
So I think if I'm reading it right, the consensus will be that this edited language here will stand, but we're gonna have a meeting with ethics to make sure there's nothing else that he feels needs to be in the rules. And then maybe a follow-up could just be a memo about how you fill out these, you know, slips as elected officials, making sure we're not crossing any lines, because I think we all like to do that, but we want to make sure we're doing it properly. Does that help address your concerns, members A?
I guess, let's see what they come up with.
Okay, sounds good. All right, moving on to section B here. All right, so we've got just chair updates. The technology committee, this is one where there was a discussion. So I just want to make sure we all remember what this was. We've talked about how the clerk should be a member of that committee because the technology, our IT department serves the clerk's office and they work together. So we have made it so that we will choose the 6 members out of this group on the equal footing. So the clerk is on the same equal footing as the sheriff or the state's attorney or our recorder, any of those other individuals. Are there any questions on that? Remember to start?
We also talked about the fact that technology could be dissolved into public works, and all of the other electeds then, including the clerk, would be admitted to the Public Works Committee, which I think makes a lot of sense. You know, on-site public works makes a lot of sense for the other electeds to be there. So Is there consensus to dissolve technology into Public Works?
Didn't think we had a consensus on that.
did
Do others feel the same way, that they would prefer it consolidated?
You know, just if I may.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I don't know when it was, a month or two, maybe right shortly after the new year, I stopped over at the county to visit, and I was watching Dana put together the finance agenda, right? And it is a lot of work to put together these agendas, and talking with staff and others. All of these committees, having all these agendas really does tax our staff. And, you know, I would also, if we're talking about, consolidating, putting technology in, I think that might be another one, but also, I like to see economic development kind of also be eliminated. We have Choose DuPage. So, that's our economic engine. And then, workforce could go under Health and Human Services. And the Convention of Visitors Bureau could report to Finance or County Board. But I'd really like to see us because the part of this was to really tighten up these committees and have more committees under one committee. So we might have a little bit longer committee meetings, but there won't be so many agendas and so many meetings for staff and everybody to attend. Because like, if you look at these other counties, they have like 8 committees, 9 committees, maybe one has 11. I mean, we have like double what these other counties do. And I know they're doing work just like we are. So, I'd be for, and this is not right now, this is going forward in 2022. So, I think it's something to consider, talk to maybe staff, public, who, I'm trying to think who is the staff for Public Works. I don't know why I can't think about it right now, but
Angela
talk with, what was that?
Is it Angela and Nick? Is that our 2 options?
And
I think it's Nick Kapmeyer and Angela.
And maybe that might be a great thing to do is talk, bring in the county, bring in the chairs of these committees to talk about how they feel their committees should be. But I would really like to tighten up some of these committees going forward and having some of them combined so that we're not having all these agendas and meetings and, taxing staff more than they already are. So those are just my thoughts.
Yeah. Nick, do you want to speak to the staff discussions we have had? Because we've definitely been doing that. I don't want anyone to think we're making decisions and this will be a surprise for staff, because I can think of few meaner things we could do to them after the last year.
Yeah, I can definitely talk. I mean, I'll talk technology specifically. And I know Chair Selman, we definitely had a long discussion about what fits where. Technology is a difficult committee to roll in anywhere, because it does touch every single department and elected official. And that's why it was made its own committee. And it has the electeds as part of it, because just like the Tyler software going in, it's so far reaching. And the thought, I know that Chair Selman, we talked about it, it's going to become more and more important as technology is more and more prevalent in everything we're doing. The one, I mean, obviously, whatever this group decides, and ultimately the county board, but one thing to think about is Public Works. I mean, we're talking about treatment plants and building projects here on campus, but then having all of those county-wides come and sit through that's something to consider. I mean, technology is a weird animal that doesn't really fit in any single one committee, and that's what our discussion we had. And I know that it was definitely talked about last time, but I don't think there was a consensus among this group that technology is one to be rolled in. That's just what I remember.
I see member to start and then member Zay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say whether we roll technology into Public Works or not, I really want to have a discussion about the length of our committee meetings, because this is the work we do. We do most of our work in committee, and this is our work. And this morning, this has been happening more and more, but this morning, for example, I left HHS early and was still 15 minutes late to transportation. And on the transportation agenda, I had one specific item I wanted to talk about, and I missed that item. and then had to bring it up in old business to discuss. But I should have been at transportation on time. I'm in my library. I'm on Zoom. I shouldn't be late to meetings. So whether we move technology into public works or however we resolve this, we need to really take a look at lengthening the amount of time we give to each committee. Thank you.
And I could not agree more. I think these are the weeks, right, where we're all running around. We're leaving meetings early or getting to them late. I did the same thing this morning. I had to leave JPS early and didn't want to. So that's not, it's like outside the purview technically of this ad hoc, but so putting on my vice chair hat, Nick and I have been discussing that. We're working on a schedule to make the meetings all at least an hour long, but keep them within business hours on Tuesdays. We're in the making sure we're not ruining staff's schedules and lives by the proposed changes stage right now. And so we'll hopefully have something for everyone to look at soon.
Well, I think it'll actually help staff because
Yeah.
people like Mary Keating or Janelle Chadwick who spend hours putting together the presentations, then when they're stuck in a half-hour time period, they have to race through these presentations that they put so much time and effort into that we're being disrespectful by making them race through them. So I actually think it would be helpful for staff.
Yeah, very much agree. I see member Zay and then member LaPlante.
Thank you. You know, I was here when we formed the technology committee because we had problems where we had departments, countywide, other people making purchases that weren't uniform. One was using gateways, one was using IBMs. End of the year when they had additional budget money, they would go out and buy printers and buy everything else just to use that budget money up. So I think it does serve a purpose. It's got us more together as on technology, everybody working together in the same direction, not somebody, has a friend here or hey, I can get a deal on these laptops today. And then our IT has, knows what's going on. We have more expertise on fixing those, knowing the programs, making sure everybody can run Office and all the other programs. I think it's a necessity. I mean, again, we talk about time. I mean, there was a time when we met on days outside of Tuesdays. I mean, we met Mondays, we met Wednesdays, we met Fridays. So, I mean, I understand I've got a joint committee with municipal members. That's why we do ours so early. But again, if we're talking about, giving people time, some meetings go for an hour, some meetings will go for 15 minutes. It's unfortunate. I know it's hard for people to miss committees because you have to run to another one. But I think technology is a necessary committee and that needs to be there. And I know they've changed their meetings to earlier now because of the time issue that they're at 7:30 now on our board days. But I think we really need to think about keeping the technology committee the way it's set up.
All right, I'm going to make a comment, then we'll go to member LaPlante and then member Chaplin. I think member Zay touched on something that's really important to remember besides just the procurement part and making sure that we're getting the best deals, because when you buy things at bulk, you usually get a better price. So if the sheriff is buying separate than other, offices, nobody's getting the better price. The security issue, I think we all think is going to be an increased focus and unfortunately won't go away. Will probably just get more complex. And that is one of the reasons it's nice to have sort of that umbrella-like structure and it all reports up. So if something goes awry in the health department, the sheriff doesn't not know about it. If they use the same system, they all kind of get contacted. Member LaPlante and then member Chaplin.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm just here to chime in and say, basically piggyback on what my colleagues have just said. I've been saying this since I started. I'm very kind of surprised by the fact that we can't always get through all of the what needs to get through in our committee meetings, meaning sometimes we have to cut discussions short. People aren't able to ask their questions. And that's why we're here. That's why the way I look at it is we're here to do this work. This is our number one job. And especially for certain topics and committee work in these unbelievably unusual circumstances of the pandemic, I feel that we're not doing, I guess, giving it our fullest capacity. And that concerns me a lot. So, and I understand how hard that must be when, to Member Zay's point, some meetings are 15 minutes, some are an hour. And how do you know how it's going to be every time? But if there can be a built-in buffer, or if we know certain committees need more attention, especially during unusual circumstances, if there's a way that we can build that in somehow. And I know that probably involves a magic wand, but anyway, just wanted to chime in as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Member Chaplin? You're muted.
Yep, thank you.
You're
Thank you,
good.
Chair. So, okay, so if we keep this committee, which sounds like we're going to do, which is fine, we have 6 countywide elected officers that serve on the committee, but we have, I think, like 10 countywides. So is there a problem to have all of the countywides on this committee? I know they then outweigh the county board members, but in order, if it's such an important committee and technology affects all of them, I think all of them should be on it then. I mean, those are my thoughts. So I'd hate to see, somebody that's on there right now that has to be booted because we have the clerk on there. So I think, I don't think in many times the countywides would overrule the county board. I would certainly hope not, but I think if it's as important and it touches all of these, each of these countywide offices, then I think maybe we have all of them on that committee. Those are just my thoughts.
Right, so that just to clarify, this is the pool of countywides. Not all of them choose to participate. So there's some people who are still named here now that have probably never been to a technology meeting and probably won't, and that's okay, that's their choice. But we wanted to keep the pool relates to the departments that IT staffs. And you're spot on as to why we didn't just name them all. We didn't want to get to a scenario where, I don't know, they all get mad at us for some reason and vote down all our tech contracts. Like, we don't want to give away that power of our board. Member Desart and then Member LaPlante.
I really like what Member Chaplin said. I like it a lot, and I agree with her. They all should be on it. And if there's a concern that they now have the majority of that committee, and if it's if the technology committee is as important as everybody's saying, then I mean, it's a committee that I have not served on just yet, so I don't maybe understand it as well as Member Zait or Member Selman understand it. But anyway, if we're concerned about number one, the importance of technology, and number two, the other electeds taking over the majority, maybe we can make this committee as the JPS committee is and add 2 members from each district onto it, if we add all the electeds onto it as well. That's my only suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, good idea.
Nick, to our ever-growing agenda, let us add that to see if we have any statutorial concerns. But I think that's a good idea, because I do think it's that important. I think falling behind in technology is one of the probably more embarrassing things we could do as the 2nd largest county in the state. And I think it's something to be really proud of, that other counties often call us and go, well, how'd you guys do that at such a great price and so quickly? So that tells me we're doing something really right. And yeah, getting more at the table, I think is a good idea. All right. How much more is in this section here, Jason? Can you just?
Nothing, if you want to stop at number 2.
Oh, okay. I think let's stop at number 2 because we're approaching an hour and a half. I want to give staff time to eat.
Well, actually, I think we might hold on. I don't think there's much. The removal is just a name change.
Okay.
Vacancy is just name change. Oh, you do?
Well, what we talked about last time wasn't true.
All right. So let's do removal then. We'll stick on that one.
Can I just, so it's on the record, say I'm not in favor of expanding technology to 14 or to 12.
Yeah.
But on the removal part, when you talk about.
Oh, sorry. Member Desart, did you have a question? Or
I had a comment before we get to removal, if that's okay, in that section 2. I think we should, well, we talked about eliminating strategic planning as a committee.
Yep.
And
you're right. That's it. We are cutting it. That's an oversight there.
So
actually.
on page 25, it has been stricken. Strategic planning has
that's
been
on
stricken.
me.
So that number 2F paragraph should be deleted.
You're absolutely right. I knew someone would find something that we lost. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's strategic planning, environment, And what's the other one we're wrapping in?
Yeah, public transit.
Public transit, yeah, so there are 3 committees that we're wrapping in. So, all right, thank you very much. And Member Eckhoff for your comments on 3 removal.
Just that it's got the county board removing somebody and then the finance committee they can appeal to the finance committee. It's the same group of people. We had talked about trying to avoid doing that.
Okay, so would you prefer that the appeal then it just goes back through the board?
No, I don't understand the point of doing a removal process twice to the same people. They're just.
I think it, okay, maybe I'm reading it differently. Hold on one second.
They remove them.
Talked about it.
Page 10, Nick.
Sorry, in the room, is there clarification? Or is,
We're just telling the page that we're on.
oh, okay, okay. Should the person,
You know what, I think, and Nick, please, Alfonso, please correct me, but I think this might be, yes, you remove them, but maybe it's a cooling off period where 30 days, they can appeal it to you guys again. Maybe you guys change your mind or something along those lines, the decision you made. I don't know if that's the case, but State's Attorney Alfonso, please.
I agree with that analysis as well.
Why wouldn't you have them appeal to the people who made the original decision, the same people? Why would you send it to a different committee?
Well, in addition, is finance committee always broadcast publicly?
Joe, is the Finance Committee always broadcast on live stream?
It's been streamed to YouTube. In the past, before the pandemic, it was never streamed. It was only recorded.
So there's no, is there any requirement that it be though? Because this allows you to have a private committee meeting where if you vote to remove a member, then the appeals process would then be public.
What is there about the Open Meeting Act that allows us to go into private session about an appeal?
Well, based upon the rule right now, no, not about an appeal. The rule says that the appeal will be done to the board as a whole.
so the way the current rule reads, I think it's the board is who removes and who would decide an appeal. The mechanism it goes through as written is just Finance Committee. So Member Eckhoff, you're saying why is Finance Committee got to be involved at all? Why don't we just keep everything at county board?
So the county board may remove, I think the wording's sort of bad on it.
Yeah, the
And-
petition for removal would remain private until it's voted on, so to speak, as it's written right now.
So the county board may remove upon petition of the finance committee stating the reasons for removal. And it goes back to the finance. I just,
Why would, I don't think the petition would be private, wouldn't it be? I think the consensus is this needs to be reworked. I don't think any of this really worded. So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
If I may, sorry, maybe this is, I mean, I'm still new here and maybe this one, was the Finance Committee ever not a committee of the whole? Was it like 12? That's probably why this must be a carryover from when it was 12 members. That would be my assumption, and it was appealed to the board in its entirety. So now that I've reread it for the 1,000th time and it's still
Clear as mud.
I think Member Eckhoff brings up a great point there then is it just a once and we're done or we can look at that if that's what the consensus is here. Nick Alfonso and I can sit down and make that a little bit clearer.
Yeah, I think if I'm reading this right, I think that is the consensus. We want to let's just keep it a county board, keep it open and transparent, blah, blah, blah. So the way I read is the within the 30 days, I don't read that as a cooling off. I read that as timely. It's so you can't, 3 years later go or whatever. And is that, I think, the agreement that if someone feels like they would want to appeal, do we want a cooling off period that like you need to give it 2 weeks before you bring it up again? Or do we just want to say in a timely manner, you need to appeal like it says here with
you're
30
only
days?
removing them, you only have the authority to remove them from a committee.
Correct.
You don't have.
Right.
So,
All right, so I think let's just clean it up that it all goes through finance and they have 30 days to appeal if they want. And we'll just get the language cleaned up and we'll review that again. All right. Yeah, remember to start?
And if they're adding language or changing the language, should there also be language in here to stipulate why a board member should be removed from a committee. I mean, it can't just be, I don't like you today, you're off the committee. It's got to be some cause, you know, should we,
Crimes or misdemeanors.
is there a way we can do that?
Yeah, do we need to specify what the for cause is, or does that reference something else that's specific? That's to ASA Nick, sorry.
By specifying cause, you would be limiting your options. You're able to do it, but it's a question of whether or not you want to limit your options as to what cause might be.
I think we do, because I know members have been taken off committees for no reason. And I just don't want that kind of authoritarian pressure, you know?
So would you, because I think the point maybe Nick is trying to make is that we want it to be as expansive as possible so someone doesn't do something uniquely horrendous and then we can't do anything. But something like for cause, like related to the violation of these rules or ethics or something like is that kind of what you want to get at? Not like these are the offenses, but more like just categorize the severity?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so Nick and Jason, can you think about if there's language that's applicable for that and sort of how either way you come, we'll make sure we discuss that. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
Nick and I will talk about it. That's not a
Okay.
problem.
All right. So I'm thinking, yeah, thank you. I think this is a good stopping point so we don't approach past 3 o'clock and then we'll resume this conversation in our next section here. Is there anything else on the part we've already discussed in these red lines that you've thought about while we've been chatting and wanted to make sure you say today? All right, seeing none. All right, let me get my agenda pulled back up here. Yeah, all right, so is there anything under old business? It's kind of in the whole meeting, I suppose, but all right, anything under new business? Yep, member Desart?
Yeah, when I was on the phone with Edgar Powell, he gave me another idea, which I thought was wonderful. Just for this board to start thinking of, or this committee to start thinking about, after we have discharged our responsibilities regarding the rules committee, I'm wondering if we would consider or want to move forward and go through, clean up, edit the DuPage County Code of Ordinances, the codes, the same committee, working through that. I enjoy your company so much. I enjoy all your company so much that we can take on the codes.
Yeah, I like these wonky, nerdy little committees too. I think we'd have to go back to the chair and get him to change the authorization, but it's a good idea. We can bring it up to him, not a problem. Member Chaplin?
Well, as long as we're talking about future committees, you know, what really needs to be gone through, I think, is the ethics ordinance. And once we get done with this, I would like to see an ethics review committee, you know, started ad hoc, because there's a lot of house cleaning that we need to do. And I think our ethics ordinance can be really shored up and really tightened and toughened up a little bit, because it's really kind of weak, in my opinion. But so that would be the next thing I would want to tackle. I think we might talk with the chairman about that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Right. Any other new business? I'll make sure I'm not missing anybody. All right, seeing none, can we get a motion to adjourn our meeting to Tuesday, April 6th? And it's my understanding that that time may not, we changed that to 1,
We
right?
changed it to 1:30.
Oh, it is right on here, so it is at 1:30.
Right on there.
Okay, so we were making room for, great.
Second, Chaplin.
All right, roll call, please.
Sart,
Aye.
what was that? What? How did I get that? I am so sorry. Sart, Eckhoff,
Video's over.
Selman,
Aye.
Day,
Aye.
Chaplin.
Aye.
All right, thank you everyone for a very productive meeting as always. See you next time.